10 years ago, if you wanted to lose your life savings, you had to book a flight to Las Vegas. Today, you can do it while waiting in line for coffee. Gambling has escaped the casino and wriggled its way into every facet of American life, from loot boxes and video games to betting on how many times Elon Musk will tweet this week. The house is no longer a building, it's an app in your pocket. So how did we get here, and why does it feel like everything everywhere is suddenly a wager? The change started back in 2018, when the United States Supreme Court declared a federal ban on sports gambling to be unconstitutional, and Murphy versus the National Collegiate Athletic Association. In the years that followed the Supreme Court's decision, dozens of states legalized sports betting, and the industry recorded sky-high profits while fundamentally changing American sports culture. It became more than just supporting the team you cherish, and you can see it if you turn on ESPN or Fox Sports today. There's a constant stream of ads for DraftKings or FanDuel. Wagers have mutated into instant gratification and instant loss. With the creation of micro-betting, platforms now allow for rapid-fire wagers on moments that happen in seconds. You have the ability to place money on almost any action that happens during the playoffs, whether a batter will strike out or a team will score on the next drive. These changes not only hurt spectators, they've also led to increased harassment of players. The rise of prop bets, which let fans wager on specific stat performances of individual athletes, reduces players to numbers and strips them of their humanity. The consequences are especially severe when they don't meet bettors' expectations, which can be seen in a 2024 NCAA study that found 1 in 3 male basketball players reported receiving harassment from bettors. This toxicity has only escalated to the point where it now threatens the integrity of sports itself. We're seeing professional athletes banned for life for manipulating their own stats to satisfy prop bets, while college players receive death threats in their DMs for something as simple as missing a free throw that tanks someone's $20 parlay. The institutions meant to protect these students are too busy cashing checks. Universities like LSU and the University of Colorado signed multi-million-dollar partnership deals with sportsbooks. While public backlash eventually forced schools to terminate these contracts, for a time, they were effectively selling access to their own student bodies. LSU even emailed underage students, encouraging them to place their first bet. So instead of educating their students, they were indoctrinating them into the house. And once the house moved into mainstream sports, it didn't stop at the stadium gates. The companies behind these tactics started looking for new ways to reach people in places where gambling was still technically illegal. And if lawmakers drew a line, the industry's response was not to stop, it was to get creative. As gambling continued to be legalized across different states, workarounds emerged wherever restrictions remained. That's how we ended up with the next evolution of this ecosystem: sweepstakes casinos. You've probably already seen ads for these sites all over social media, with platforms like Stake.us and Chumba Casino leading the charge. To elaborate, these platforms use a dual currency loophole. You purchase play money that has no cash value, but the site gifts you a secondary currency as a bonus. This secondary currency can be redeemed for real cash prizes, and because you technically didn't buy the gambling chips, you were gifted them, they argue it's a sweepstakes promotion, not a casino, which allows them to operate in states where traditional online gambling is banned. But the loophole goes deeper than just the business model. While these sites technically require users to be 18 or 21, depending on the platform, many only verify your identity when you try to cash out, not when you sign up. That means a teenager can create an account, play for weeks or months, and only get stopped when they actually try to redeem their winnings. By then, the gambling behavior has already been established, and the marketing knows exactly who it's targeting. Celebrities like Drake and Aiden Ross have been accused in lawsuits of using their massive social media followings to glamorize gambling to young, impressionable audiences. One lawsuit described Drake's role as Stake's unofficial mascot and quietly corrosive, claiming the marketing was directed specifically at teenagers. Drake alone has 142 million Instagram followers. Influencer content floods platforms like TikTok and Instagram, blurring the line between entertainment and advertisement, which makes gambling feel like just another form of content consumption. The numbers back up the concern. According to a 2024 study, the age group with the highest rate of gambling addiction is 18 to 24 at over 7%. Research has found that teenagers are up to 4 times more likely than adults to develop a gambling addiction if they start young. And in Springfield, Massachusetts, a 2024 youth behavior survey found that nearly 30% of 8th graders had participated in some form of gambling activity in the last year. And while sweepstakes casinos are operating in a legal gray area, the next frontier has abandoned the law entirely. We're moving from legal loopholes to completely unregulated platforms known as crypto casinos. Crypto casinos are platforms like RainBet that don't rely on the American banking system, which acts as a final checkpoint for age verification and fraud, Instead, they operate on the blockchain. By transacting in cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum, they bypass the red tape of financial regulations. There are no safeguards here, just pure, decentralized wagering that is often completely anonymous. And because they operate outside the reach of traditional regulators, their marketing strategies have become ubiquitous and incredibly aggressive. Ads for these platforms like BrainBet are everywhere, and that's by design. They're actively buying into internet culture. This new wave of casinos has embedded itself into the very infrastructure of youth entertainment. They aggressively sponsor the meme pages or viral clip channels that dominate TikTok and Instagram. They sign multi-million-dollar contracts with streamers to broadcast high-stake gambling alongside Call of Duty. This creates a dangerous cognitive dissonance for young users. When you're betting with tokens or fractions of a Bitcoin on a site that looks just like the video games you play after school, the reality of money evaporates. It feels less like losing your savings and more like spending in-game currency. By the time the user realizes the crypto wallet is empty, the house, which might have been hosted on a server halfway across the world immune to US law, has already won. This issue specifically hit close to home for me. When I was in high school, I found a crypto gambling site that used a freemium model to lure users in. They required absolutely no forms of verification, and you could just open up the landing page to choose which game you wanted to play. They gave out small daily amounts of their own token to get you started, but it quickly paved the way for you to gamble with real assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum. What hooked me specifically was that the games hosted by the website were set up just like video games. My favorite was a game called Rocket Run, where you would bet money, and the higher the rocket went, the larger your multiplier became and the more you earned. However, it could also crash and you could lose everything. You had to make the active choice to jump out before the potential explosion. But who would want to do that when you jumped too early last time and missed out on 100 times multiplier? In the end, I was completely addicted and played for hours at a time, using the free assets at first. But when they dried up, I couldn't stop. I started wasting hundreds of dollars on the website until I realized that the money for my part-time job had started to dry up. Even with that realization, it was hard for me to quit. I was tied to the game, and the thought of winning my money back and more was motivation for me to continue. Thankfully, with some help from my family, I was able to go completely cold turkey, and I haven't gambled ever since, and I don't plan to anytime soon. Some critics of this video might argue that the solution is simple. Just exercise personal responsibility and avoid the apps and websites. But that defense ignores how early the conditioning begins. Impressionable audiences aren't encountering these risks for the first time at 18, not by a long shot. With the explosion of gambling mechanics in video games, the psychological seed is planted the moment a child is old enough to pick up a phone or a controller. Games like Genshin Impact are available on every platform, including phones, which makes them incredibly accessible to younger audiences. These games use a mechanic called gacha, based on Japanese capsule toy machines, where you spend in-game currency for a random pool from a rotating banner of characters. The odds of you getting the character that you actually want can be as low as 0.6%. The game gives you some currency for free just by playing, but it's designed to run out right when you're most invested. After that, the only way to keep pooling is to pay. When players complain about the odds, companies point to something called a pity system as proof that they're being fair. In Genshin, if you don't pull the featured character after 90 attempts, you're guaranteed to get them. That sounds reasonable until you actually do the math. Reaching that pity threshold costs roughly $200 to $300 US. And on top of all that, if you want to upgrade your characters to their full strength, you have to pull the same character multiple times, which means repeating the entire process. Genshin alone has made over $5 billion this way, mostly from players spending real money to chase digital characters they're never guaranteed to get. Gacha is just one example of many gambling mechanics within modern gaming. Loot boxes are just as widespread, if not more so. They share a lot of overlap with gacha, but instead of trying to gain new characters, they give you either cosmetics or items that give you a competitive edge. Depending on the game, you can either buy or earn a box to open and receive a random selection of virtual items. Some games sell the boxes directly, others give you the boxes for free, but charge you for the keys to open them. Either way, the randomness is the issue. Instead of just being able to buy the skin you would like, you might have to pay hundreds of dollars just for the chance of obtaining it. This system actively affects youth, especially within the Counter-Strike community. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to 2013. Valve, the company behind Counter-Strike, released an update called Arms Deal that introduced cosmetic weapon skins into the game. These skins don't make your guns shoot faster or deal more damage. They just make it look different with a variety of skins and stickers. But because some designs are rarer than others, and because Valve Valve controls exactly how many of each skin exists, these digital items quickly became status symbols. Some skins sell for hundreds of dollars, but the rarest have gone for over 400,000 real US dollars. So with the increase of gambling mechanics within video games, the addiction starts young and becomes even more dangerous as people grow up. Children start with video games, and as they grow older, they move on to sports betting, sweepstake casinos, or others until they reach the real casinos themselves, which have gained protections throughout the years. And those protections run deep, especially in Los Angeles County, where a cluster of small cities southeast of downtown have built their entire municipal budgets around card rooms. Hawaiian Gardens, the smallest city in LA County, receives over 70% of its general fund from a single casino, while Bell Gardens draws roughly half its budget from the bicycle casino. This economic dependency shapes every decision these cities make. When COVID shut down the card rooms in 2020, Hawaiian Gardens was hemorrhaging $1.1 million a month, forcing the city to lay off nearly 40% of its staff and gut programs for youth and seniors. Mayors from across the region held joint press conferences begging county health officials to let them reopen, worrying that without gaming revenue, they couldn't afford to pay police or firefighters. And when your city's survival depends on gambling, you fight to protect the industry at all costs. In 2023, Hawaiian Gardens Casino alone spent $9.1 million on lobbying, the second highest amount in the entire state, more than every company except Chevron. So with gambling actively growing, becoming protected, and finding ways to completely work outside the law, what can we actually do in this situation? Well, there are examples of good news, and it comes in the form of the Safe Bet Act, introduced in late 2024 by Representative Paul Tonko and Senator Richard Blumenthal. The Supporting Affordability and Fairness with Every Bet Act marks the first time the federal government has tried to treat gambling as a public health crisis, on the same level as tobacco or alcohol. It proposes a ban on all gambling ads during live sporting events and prohibits predatory buzzwords like risk-free or bonus bets that lure in first-time users. It tackles the financial ruin we're seeing by banning credit card deposits and requiring affordability checks for high-stake wagers. But what may be most important is the fact that it would ban the use of AI to track individual player habits for personalized promotions, and it effectively outlaws the AI-generated microbets that turn sports into a rapid-fire Skinner box. It also bans prop bets on college athletes entirely, aiming to stop the harassment of students who are just trying to play a game. Lobbyists argue that these regulations go too far and will only push gamblers towards the illegal, unregulated crypto casinos that we discussed earlier. But the alternative, which is doing nothing while an entire generation is gamified into debt, is a gamble that we can no longer afford to take. Realistically, this bill won't pass without a fight. The gambling lobby is spending millions to keep the status quo. And if you want to see the Safe Bet Act become law, you can't just hope for it. You need to call your representatives and tell them to support the legislation introduced by Paul Tonko and Richard Blumenthal. But beyond that, we have to change the culture. We have to stop treating these apps like video games and start treating them like what they are, extraction machines. If you have a story like mine, please don't keep it hidden, and instead take the time to share it with groups like the Public Health Advocacy Institute, who are fighting this battle in court. The industry relies on our silence and shame to keep the money flowing, and it's time that we stop giving them both. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as it helps support the channel and allows me to make more videos like this one. If you're looking for a more down-to-earth experience, go ahead and check out my Twitch as well. Also, I need to take the time to thank one of my community members, known as the Daisy Experience on YouTube. She helped me with the research and gave amazing feedback for the script of this video, so please check them out whenever you have the chance. So once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.